Here. All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, let's move to public comment. And this is going to be an opportunity for anybody in the public to speak on items that are not on our agenda, and you have 3 minutes. So it appears that we have one person. Matthew, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Vasilakis from Climate Action Campaign. As you know, one of the benefits of not being first at implementing CCE is our opportunity to take the best practices from others. And today we wanted to share an important document from our friends at East Bay Community Energy, their local development business plan. So Climate Action Campaign had a great conversation with their leadership on how this guiding document has helped their board make critical decisions on local renewable power development, equitable community and workforce benefits, and building out their bold vision for an independent clean energy future. To be climate resilient, we need a decentralized power system. In the long run, we cannot be blindly buying power. We have to develop a locally and inclusively in concert with our climate action plans. So please take some time to read the executive summary of the East Bay Local Development Business Plan and consider hiring a consultant down the line who can develop a similar plan for our CCE program. Specifically, we hope that this consultant can work with the Promise Community Advisory Committee, which we hope is launched no later than Q1 of 2020. And on another note, we would like to keep elevating the issue of San Diego's franchise agreement. This agreement will impact everyone in the region, determining rate structures on the distribution and transmission side, as well as SDG&E or the other franchisees' commitment to be faithful to the city of San Diego's goals. We encourage the board to be actively engaged in the following processes and consider weighing in, as they will be a public and transparent process with public hearings. For CAC, we are going to advocate that the city change the payee of the fees from ratepayers to shareholders, that SDG&E or another franchisee commit to lower transmission rates, allow for fair integration of distributed energy resources, getting rid of the minimum fixed bill and flat fee that undermine energy efficiency and solar customers, a loyalty agreement with the city, and our 100% clean energy goals, and other critical terms and conditions for the privilege of using our public right-of-way. You all similarly can weigh in what you see as critical deal points that will impact your ability to carry out your mission here at the CCE program. And if I don't have time later today, I just wanted to make clear we are advocating for San Diego community power. We think that the word community is absolutely necessary, and a geographic connotation would be important. So thank you so much.
I don't have any other cards. Do we have any other speakers anybody else in the public that would like to speak at this point for public comment? All right, let's move on. I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the city of Chula Vista. This is a beautiful city hall, beautiful city council chambers, and thank you so much for hosting this meeting today. Our next meeting is actually in the city of Encinitas, so I hope you don't think it's gonna be as beautiful as this. We have a very nice city hall, but this is really nice. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the consent calendar, and we have the approval of the minutes from October 31st, 2019.
I'll move the minutes.
Do we have a second? All right, we have a second. Let's vote.
And once you've entered your vote, if you could please push the lock vote button. Thank you. Motion carries with all council members voting yes.
All right. Let's move on to the regular agenda items. And the first item is election of our board chair, vice chair, and appointment of our interim secretary. Let's ask our interim executive officer to speak to this item.
Need to figure out how to work the system here. Good afternoon, thank you. So there's two parts to this action. One is to elect a board chair and vice chair. And then the second is to appoint Megan Weigelman as she's the board clerk currently for the city of La Mesa and ran our very first meeting to appoint her as interim board secretary until the CCA hires a permanent position.
So do you want that as two separate
Two
discussions?
separate actions and discussions.
Do you care which one goes first?
I don't have a preference.
Well, I'll nominate Megan to be our secretary because since I can't pay her more, I want to give her kudos for taking this assignment.
I will second that motion.
All right, all in favor? Please vote.
Motion carries with all council members voting yes.
All right, Megan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan. I have a motion on the second part, too.
All right, perfect.
After talking with you, my understanding is that you're willing to continue to serve as chair?
Yes.
Okay. I would make that motion, but I would like to perhaps direct staff to come back or at least have a discussion here at the next meeting about setting up a rotation system for chair. Maybe you can bring us back a policy to discuss, and the rotation can be based on seniority, alphabetical or something, but to allow all the 5 cities at some point in their time here to serve as chair. And it doesn't have to be an amendment to the JPA, it can be a policy, but bring back a couple of options. Are you okay with that?
I am. I think that it's very important that we have a collegial kind of matter in which we engage, and I think that it's important to have a rotation where every member city has an opportunity to serve in leadership if they want to.
Okay, well then, I'll say that's a motion for you as chair and direction to staff.
Do you have a second on that? Second. All right. All in favor, please vote.
Motion passes with all board members voting yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I am truly honored to be chair for the next year, and I'm absolutely committed to working with everybody to make sure that this CCE is a huge success, that we reach all of our commitments and goals together. So thank you. Let's have a motion for vice chair.
Well, my thinking is we either punish Mr. West or Mr. Padilla for not being here. Who do you want to punish more?
I think that it would be a good appointment to see that Chula Vista. Steve is next in the queue. So
Yes, I would just say that Steve expressed although he wasn't able to make it here, he expressed his desire that if it's possible that he would become vice chair.
Perfect. So I'll make that motion. I'll move that Steve Padilla from the city of Chula Vista is our vice chair.
I will second that.
All right. We have a motion. Please cast your vote.
Did we do it right?
You have to lock.
There we go, lock it.
Member Baber, if you could push your lock vote.
If it's blue, is it working or black?
It's blue, it's locked.
Okay, I think I had it locked and I unlocked it, sorry.
Just when we get a handle on it, we'll move to another city.
Yeah.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
All right, let's move to item number 6, and that is going to be our operations and administration report, and our interim executive officer will take that.
Great, thank you. So a couple items, this is a standing item for now as we have a lot of startup activities happening and business to update you on. So you see on the list on the screen here, these are the actions that we're working on. So a few next steps for the board and some reminders. One is that your Form 700s are due. So if you please haven't turned them in, please turn them into Megan. I saw a few come in. Those are due by the 30th. And if you have any questions, we can talk to Megan offline about that. The other update is that we are working on a few processes and steps. So one is the credit and banking services partner. We have issued an RFP for that, and that RFP has closed, and we're reviewing those now. And we anticipate coming to the board at our next meeting on December 9th with a recommendation for a bank to continue negotiations with and finalize that effort. The next item here is going into more vendor RFPs, so that's the biggest one. We need to get our financing in order so that we can continue all of our other work. So we're looking at securing about $40 million in both startup costs for staffing and startup capital. And Public Financial Management, they're PFM, they're helping us on this, work reviewing bids and doing the final negotiations with our potential vendors. So this will be followed next year with additional RFPs for data and back office management, call center services, marketing communications. We also anticipate issuing, hopefully this week if we can, an RFP for it's essentially called a power services or energy services provider. And that will be a firm or a selection of firms that will help us actually go to market and buy power and do a lot of the power planning that we need to do. That will help you with all the decisions you have to make over the next year. So that's A and B there. So JPA amendments and board policies. We anticipate bringing a series of policies forward beginning in the first quarter of next year. For example, the one that you just mentioned about rotations of chairs and vice chair. Those are items that don't need JPA amendments. Those are policies that the board can set, typical of any city council where they set operating policies in addition to their foundational charter or law that they follow. So those will anticipate coming forward next year. Let's see, what else? And that will include a series of fiscal, procurement, HR, all the things that we need as an organization. Similarly, moving on to committees, we'd like to do the same thing there and start forming those committees. We have a few identified in the Joint Powers Authority Agreement, and potentially others that you all come up with and feel that are necessary. We'd like to start bringing those forward in the first quarter of next year. We're getting near the end of this first year where we're actually completing the most immediate steps we need to be formed an operational entity so we could start thinking about those longer term items. Ad hoc committees were something that has come up. Just to be clear, those are informal and temporary in nature and sunset once the issue that they were formed has resolved or completed. And we have a few of those moving. One is we discussed at the last meeting for legal and regulatory support. We have items on the agenda today that will resolve those issues, hopefully, and if not, we can continue that ad hoc committee. Let's see what else. An interim staff reports is just another quick update. We will similarly bring a draft plan forward, hopefully next month, that talks about how we'll start staffing up and also the effort that we're already putting forward with Megan, with myself and others, what that looks like as part of the JPA agreement. We had said we'd bring forward a plan so that the board knows fully and in public what we're spending, what we're putting forward as far as efforts and resources to get this organization off the ground and present that to you. I believe that is it. I had one more item that wasn't in here. It's just an update on the workshop we had on Saturday. Just overall, we had an Energy 101 workshop, organized with help from Clean Tech San Diego, and I think it was fairly successful and really provided a foundational level of knowledge in the energy space. I just want to make sure that was mentioned here. That's it.
All right, that was a good report.
Can we comment on that?
Sure, sure.
Cody, the ad hocs, what are the ad hocs committee? I think I learned today I was on one. Didn't know for sure.
There are, well, as far as I'm aware, there were two, and one I think is ending today was the legal and regulatory services that we needed, and that was Councilor Montgomery and Padilla. And then there was a second, what was the second one for?
Was it
SDG&E.
Dealing with SDG.
Is that the one I'm on?
It was unclear. So if you would like to be on one, please let me know.
Yeah.
think
I
you
got in
showed an
trouble for not
interest.
showing up at a meeting. I didn't know I was supposed to be there. Okay. Is that
You weren't in trouble from me.
is that Joe and I supposed to run that ad hoc?
It was unclear from the last meeting. Councilmember Mosca was definitely part of it, and that was the only, we reviewed the notes, that was the only part that was clear. So if you'd like to join that, we had our first meeting, and it was, pretty technical. It will get fairly technical.
And then I would propose, and you can bring this back for discussion next time, an ad hoc to start to set up for PUC legislative, that side, to start to set up that monitoring process. Because as we learned at your helpful workshop and at the CCA meeting, a lot of our efforts have to be in watching the PUC and the legislature. So it doesn't have to be a standing committee, but we probably need an ad hoc to set up a system to monitor those two bodies.
I mean, I do think that in the future, I envision that at least two of the standing committees that we would have on a permanent basis would be ledge and regulatory and budget and finance. And so Do we want to say that it would be an ad hoc, which would be kind of a temporary committee that would have a specific mission? Or do we want to say that in 2020, we're going to look at launching our standing committee of legislative regulatory committee, which will have, open it up to our alternates and board members to kind of serve on?
I was just thinking ad hoc for the interim, just to get it set up, and then, but if we're prepared to announce that as a standing committee, once it becomes a standing committee, you Brown Act notice it, you hold open, public meetings. Ad hocs are just short-term, short fix things. So, everything we're doing right now seems to be, trying to get the house in order. But I'm okay if you want to make it a standing committee right now.
What do you guys think?
I would agree with the chair. I think we should make it a standing committee because it's extremely important. There are also some other outstanding committees, I think, that are extremely important, and we have to determine how we're going to phase out our committees and our workloads because there are kind of a lot of competing priorities in this area, and I just want to make sure that we're not getting into a conversation about a bunch of ad hocs and without looking at the full picture of the work that our committees want to do. But that one is extremely important. I think we won't, especially with some of the items coming up with regard to some of the decisions we'll be making about council, I think we may be able to have a little bit of time to just do the formal standing committee for that. That's just my opinion.
I agree with that. I actually think that the SDG&E ad hoc is going to be a permanent one too, because I don't think we're going to not have issues with SDG&E over the lifetime of us.
I agree.
And it's billing, it's other things. Many times it'll just be good faith relations, but our interaction with SDG&E is important. So I'd actually make that a standing one too eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree, not that in terms of the issues, but I think the partnership and the relationship needs to have constant communication. And, I was just in a part of the conversation yesterday, and we were talking about them launching their new information system. And I think that us being at the table, engaging and having that open dialogue with our local utility is important, just to make sure that, that we're trying to plan for and avoid any hiccups in the future. And that even, when we're basically talking about phasing our launch, that we're basically doing that in concert with, understanding of what their new CIS system can handle as well. So, because we don't want to be slowed down in our mission, but we also don't want to have issues in the future that are going to blemish our reputation as well. So, but I do think that the standing committees also will. I said this before, that I'm hoping that we would basically stay to like once a month for the board meetings, and then really utilize the committee system to really kind of vet and look at some of the policies and then bring them to the board. And it's also an opportunity to get more of our alternates working hard for us and all of us working together, but have them engaged as well. When you look at other CCEs, a lot of the alternates even chair some of those committees. And so I think it's also an opportunity to get, beyond the 5 of us up here, having more folks involved in helping us out with policy.
I was going to propose, Cody, that you bring back a policy for the roles of alternates, because there's only 5 of us and we need all 10. Obviously, the JPA says there's only 1 vote per city, and that's the primary. But other than that, I think we ought to have a policy to get our alternates as fully involved as possible. And if you want to bring back a proposed policy on how the committee system would work, that would be good too.
I mean, I think we can look at that, and I think that the committees are one way to get as many people involved as possible. I'm always willing to engage in any kind of dialogue and discussion, but I think that to have alternates sitting up here and engaging in the discussion, we'll have a situation where somebody's going to say it's unfair, because most committees and boards, you have a situation where alternates are seen as you're only going to come, if Steve's not here, then the alternate comes, or if you're not here, So most alternates are taking that role on, thinking that they're only gonna basically step up if the primary's not able to make it. Inevitably, we're gonna have a situation where you're gonna have, one city having two people up here and one city not having, two people. And so, some people will say that it's unfair because a lot of our conversation is gonna be consensus oriented. And so, I think as you go down that road, do you wanna have an alternate for the alternate? Because, inevitably, there's gonna be a city, a member, that's not gonna have two people at the table. And so what I would say is really the way to engage and make sure the alternates are engaged and helping with the whole thing is through the committee process. Make sure that, when you look at budget and if we have a budget and finance, if we have a regulatory and legislative committee, those are critical committees. And those are where some of the critical policies are gonna be born out of, and then we'll take those up here.
Okay, well, you've, I think I expressed last time that alternates, I'd prefer they can sit here and they can express their opinion. I suppose there is a problem theoretically where an alternate, a member in one city might disagree, but, we factor that in, there's only one vote. And in terms of your concern that it will look like there's two people from La Mesa, nobody from Imperial Beach, my attitude would be, hey, if the people who show up get to run things, so get the people who aren't there to show up, basically.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad for that if they're not here.
Yeah, well, so we're not talking about just the primary. The primary has to be here, but you're talking about an alternate not being here. And so,
You're saying if a city has no one here?
right, so, or you have a primary, like right now I have a primary, I'm the primary, but I don't have, my alternate's not here. She didn't anticipate being here because she's not the
Oh,
primary.
are you saying to have a third,
Well,
second
I'm
alternate?
just saying, the logical kind of flow of, if the alternate wasn't able to make it, then you'd have an alternate for the alternate because you have two people.
We didn't put that in the JPA, but that would make sense if you wanted to have a third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chairman, I really like this discussion. I think it's very productive. I would say with the alternates, and as I am an alternate, obviously, I think the primary would be the sole voting members, but I think engaging and empowering and having the alternates take ownership would be very, very helpful. And I think getting them involved in the committees would be able to do that. I still think, this is my perspective, that it would be one vote per city. But however we could get them in, because I know exactly what you're saying. Somebody is on an alternate for some type of regional board, and they never really even look at it or think about it till suddenly that one time right before Thanksgiving, the primary is not there. So then the alternate, fills in and everything. And again, I have a bias. I have a master's degree in economics. I worked at the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan. This is fascinating stuff. My wife used to actually provide testimony for the California Public Utilities Commission up in Sacramento. This is incredible time to be here. And I think the more we can engage the alternates and be able to leverage them and their strengths, by putting them on committees, I think would be positive.
I agree. And I think that's what our JPA agreement also anticipated.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, I think we should also, if we're asking Ms. Hovind to come back with something, engage the alternates on this conversation, even if it's just briefly. Ask the alternates how they feel, what the expectation was when they were appointed as an alternate. Some people have different ideas of what that may mean, and so I think we should engage the alternates in this conversation. But I do also agree that, which kind of goes back to the other discussion, that we do need to start figuring out how we're going to roll out the committees, because I do think that there's a lot of meat in the committees that that's how a lot of input will be heard as well. I'm sort of neither, here nor there with what the dais looks like necessarily, but I think just whatever we do is empowering alternates, especially if that's what we're getting from the alternates. We should figure out a way to do that. So, and I think the first step would be including them in this conversation as staff prepares those documents. And I just had one other question, just from the report. Just making clear that we are filing the implementation plan by the end of the year, and that is it, right? And then we'll look at the JPA agreement is kind of our internal document.
That's right, we do have to
Okay.
file the JPA agreement with a series of state agencies and locally, but it is, the implementation plan is the biggest requirement for this year, and any amendments we make to the JPA document can be refiled later.
Okay, okay.
If I could make, I think I captured all of your direction on this topic. I just want to reflect back to you and make sure I understand, and a couple of comments. Later on the agenda is a general counsel contract, so should that be approved, I think this discussion about alternates is something I could discuss with them and bring that as part of the discussion I bring back to you, is what I'm hearing, on ad hoc committees and the role of alternates. I know some feedback I had gotten initially was, in the JPA language, it does say that alternate serves if the primary seat is not present. And the second concern with having alternates at the dais is some of the discussion you all have is not a vote, but it's actually just general consensus discussion and direction to me. So, in the staff, so in the instance when either one city is not fully represented with two voices, or those voices differ, it can create some issues and perception issues at the very least. So that was some feedback I got, but I think maybe discussing this with general counsel and getting their advice might be helpful as well.
And I do agree, just having, having the conversation about the necessary committees sooner than later is good. Especially, I think, considering that Bill already, and I believe that the regulatory and legislative portion, especially at what we've heard at our last workshop, how critically important they are to get up to speed as quickly as possible. So having that committee up, again, is another opportunity for folks to get involved. And maybe even having a conversation about what other committees we should be launching in 2020.
And what I could do is, the JPA does contemplate a few of those. I could put together a summary for you all next time of different committees with other CCA's kind of best practices and understanding what those may be. Another one that I'm not sure I heard mentioned is the risk committee, and that would be a standing item where some of these regulatory items could also be covered. We do have Sean Marshall with Lean Energy here. She's our consultant that's helping us and helped other CCAs. I don't know if you want to ask her any questions of best practice now of other CCAs, or if you want to table this discussion and I could bring back some research to you next time.
Well, you've heard our discussion. Do you have any constructive feedback?
Hopefully
It's all
always
nonsense.
constructive. I think great discussion, and I think where you were, headed, Cody, with this, in listening to all of it, is that it would make sense for us to come back with sort of the universe of potential committees, because the one thing I have a little heart palpitation around is getting too many standing committees too soon, because you're very limited staff, and you guys, you have to staff all that, and we have all of these other things to do. So totally get it that committees are a great way to engage and necessary, but I think it would be good to select them when you look at sort of the whole universe of what's necessary and possible. And we could come back to you, I think, in December with something like that if you'd like us to.
But certainly the budget and finance, and well, certainly legislative and regulatory would be, I think, one that we can launch pretty quickly.
Sure, and don't forget, you will have he's not here today, but assuming that you approve the contract, you will have a regulatory attorney attending all of your meetings, attending all of the Cal CCA calls. So you're going to have that function staffed here pretty quick, which will help a lot. So yes, I think, but in terms of like budget and finance, you might want to look at that in the context of an executive committee or in the context of energy risk management. There are a couple different ways to house these things and maybe broaden the scope so that you don't have so many smaller committees, would be my only thought.
Well taken.
In the JPA, we said we would have I forget how we defined it.
Community Advisory Committee?
Yeah, so we need to get that set up.
Right.
And then we said we may have a technical advisory committee. The technical advisory committee on our sewer JPA is hyper important. So I would propose, I know when we were debating that during the formation, we went with may instead of shall. But I would propose, when you bring back a discussion of the committee system, that you bring back that technical advisory, because that could overlap some of the dealings with SDG and also.
Right.
And one more thing, when we were at the league the CCA meeting, it's my understanding, do we have a representative on the board, or does somebody, one of us have to get appointed to that board too? What's our affiliation with the mothership now?
With which mothership? Cal
The Cal
CCA?
CCA, yeah.
Yes, I need to work that out. We have a staff representation currently, and when we renew our membership, we can even potentially be on their board at the staff level. But I think from our discussion on Saturday, their involvement of the board level, it was a little less clear. So I can look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. Sorry if I called them the mothership. You know what I meant.
I think their board is more staff kind of oriented, and then I
Yes.
think that they do have some committees. Because we went to a luncheon where they were forming a committee made up of local electeds, which I think is more oriented toward kind of outreach to some of the electeds in Sacramento.
Yeah, are we actually a member and paying dues to them now?
We're not a full member yet, but we are, I forget what the term is, but an
Affiliated
ancillary- yeah,
member.
affiliated
Yeah.
member for now.
So
We will be.
if we're paying them money, we should have somebody up there.
Agreed.
It can be staff, it can be elected, and they look like they could use our help too.
Yes.
So any other comments on this item? And do we have any public comment on this item? No, not seeing any public comment. Is anybody here that wants to speak to this item in the public? All right, well, I guess it's just a receive and file. So let's move on to item number 7, approval of legal services engagement of general counsel. Cody, did you want to take this?
Yes, so it's a pretty straightforward recommendation, and it's approval of a 13-month agreement with Best and Krieger, of which Ryan Barron is in the audience, should you have any questions for him directly, to provide general counsel legal services beginning December 1st through December 31st of next year. And there's some caveats in the description of the letter of engagement. That agreement and the capped dollar amount cannot be changed without either the CEO or the board's discretion, and some other terms in there that are of interest. But it's a highly necessary role for the CCA, as all the work that we have to do to start this organization up. And so we're presenting this option to you. It's a very competitive offer that they provided us, and they have a full suite of options and services that they can provide, and have expertise and experience with other CCAs and also municipal type government roles.
All right,
Recommendation is to approve it.
thank you. Do we have,
I will make the motion to approve.
do we have a second on
moved.
that motion?
I'll second. Can I ask a
Sure.
BBK question?
Let's have discussion on the item.
Okay. Nick, good to see you again. Nick represents, we're on the San Diego Sewer JPA, and he does a great job. So, and Ryan, is that you? So, I know the answer is probably yes, but just for the record, you don't represent any of the 5 cities, or if you do, you don't represent them on any matters related to energy, because we always want our general counsel to be independent of the 5 members. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay.
So,
Good afternoon, Chair and honorable board members. Ryan Barron, Nick Norvell.
Yeah.
so Ryan, are you going to be the attorney that, I know the contract's with BBK, but are you going to be the attorney that's assigned?
Yes, I will be. I'll be, if you approve it today, I'll act as your general counsel. Whatever services you need, Nick Norvell will act as assistant general counsel. My background's been in utilities law for about 20 years. I started actually at San Diego State doing energy-related work in college. And I've been working with public agencies and general counsel work for about 15 years. And I've worked on the LA County startup teams. I'm counsel to Western Community Energy, Desert Community Energy, helped start up San Jacinto Power, and City of Pomona recently joined the CCEA program, and advising cities in the 3 IOU service territories on their CCA options. And then sort of working in my own community personally, trying, hopefully CCA will launch. So thank you for having our contract before you. It's a real honor to be here. It's a really exciting time as well. So we've been a part of this, and it's a sprint. It's a lot of work to get to launch, and we're happy to do whatever we can to help you.
Perfect. So what kind of process did you go through to understand any kind of conflicts of interest? Just because it was asked.
We run a conflicts check with all of the cities. I think the city of Chula Vista city attorney has asked us to do a conflicts waiver, because we do some special counsel work, not energy related, for the city. So we have a pretty robust conflicts office that's run out of Walnut Creek, and it runs all of the members, and then that goes firm-wide. It's actually an email that goes to every attorney in the firm to see it, to say if they have any input on whether there's a potential conflict of interest or not, and then those checks are gone through and signed off or not.
All right.
And,
So this is up to 120,000 annually for the contract, and then it's not earned unless it's used and billed.
Correct.
And it's billed, and you bill us, you send us invoice every month.
Correct. It's not a retainer. It's an hourly basis for work performed, subject to the, the financing requirements, the at-risk requirements. And so it's up to the cap in the contract, and whatever services you want to use. If you don't want to use it, up to the duration of the contract, should you choose to renew it or not. So it's very flexible. It can be terminated anytime, et cetera.
Perfect.
And, Mr. Chair, they represent the sewer JPA, of which IB, La Mesa, and Chula Vista are members, but they represent the whole body, not the individual members. And Ryan, Nick has me and Padilla grilling him once a month, and he's still here, so that's a good sign.
It's true. So do you guys specialize in wastewater? Because I think you also have, we have 2 wastewater facilities in Encinitas, and it's Encina and San Alejo. So I think you guys also represent those as well.
We do represent a number of wastewater agencies here in the
All right.
county, not, as you mentioned, Encina and the others, but we do have wastewater clients, yes.
All right. Do we have any other questions, Monica?
I just have a couple questions. Thank you for being here. Maybe just one and a comment that I hope I don't get in trouble for. So I am from the city of San Diego, and we do have a city attorney's office that is very hypersensitive to the Brown Act. And so we are and I think that's because we're San Diego and we get sued a lot for things, and the Brown Act is a part of litigation a lot. And so I know that a lot of that, our exchange, in and out of meetings and so forth is, is a sensitive issue. And so I just want to check in on that issue with you all, because I think for general counsel, maybe it'll be more into some of our operations things and operations issues. And so what is your experience around that, and just how you see yourself playing a role in our business?
I think the Brown Act is our top priority as general counsel. I was in-house for 12 years for a large county, working for a board of supervisors, planning commissions, airport land use commissions, waste and recycling committees, joint powers authorities that we staffed. And so the Brown Act has always been my top priority as a public law lawyer, to make sure it's followed, to ensure that there aren't violations, to scrutinize the agendas for discussions on the dais, to keep within the Brown Act confines of the topic. So it's a extremely important issue, and that's something that we would definitely ensure.
Okay. Thank you for that. And Mr. Kawar and Mr. Patel, please don't tell the city attorney that I said that. They're from our IBA's office. Thanks.
I don't know if now's a good time to tell you we have 2 city attorneys sitting in the front row.
Yeah, we
I
saw
meant
them.
no harm. I think it's great because we know how to do what we do, so because of you.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Unless there's more conversation on this item, we will move to, and I don't have any public comment, so we will move to vote. Please cast your vote.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you guys. Let's move to item number 8, and we will talk about regulatory support. So approval of legal services engagement for regulatory support. We spoke about this at last meeting, that general counsel is not necessarily covering everything, and so this is one of the areas that we're going to actually drill down and hire an attorney that's going to help with regulatory support. So Cody, did you want to take it from here?
Yeah, similar to the last one, only in different topic areas. This is a recommendation to approve the 1-year agreement with Tosdell APC, and he actually can't be here today. But this is to provide regulatory monitoring and reporting, engagement, and legal services beginning January 1st through December 31st of next year. The scope broadly as discussed here. There's also a dollar amount cap. I should mention both this dollar amount, which is 200K, and the item for general counsel, which is 120,000, are per the approved implementation budget that we have currently. And they both firms have agreed to take on the risk that this is contingent upon us receiving financing and funding our operations. So this activity of regulatory engagement is highly critical. This is what affects the business planning and operations of a CCA in the CPUC arena. And so I think this is a very important function, and I'm happy that we could bring an experienced firm who knows SDG&E territory very well and has already been operating in this space and provide some support to Solana Energy Alliance as well. I think this will be a service that we fully appreciate and utilize.
Did our ad hoc committee vet these two?
I spoke, we didn't convene as a group, but I spoke with both council members individually about this issue and both of these options, and they both agreed.
So I'll defer to Monica on that.
Yes, I think, of course, we're thinking long-term, right? So we don't want to pressure ourselves too much into getting into any contract that we shouldn't, but I think this is extremely important, and did have the conversation with staff about, moving forward in this way. So I am okay with this item, and I will move the item, and definitely take in any discussion that my fellow board members have.
I will second that and thank Monica for her motion and her working on this. And as Cody said, the firm is actually taking a little bit of a risk because they won't get paid unless we get the funding. So I think that's a positive thought on their side, that they are in it with us as well.
Right. And I would only add that I've met Ty several times at different functions, from the Cal CCA to just recently at our workshop, and I've completely impressed with his experience, his knowledge base, his understanding of the industry, of the utility industry, and also where CCEs throughout the state of California find themselves in right now. And so I think he's going to be of great assistance on the monitoring front, what's going on at PUC, but also with regard to the legal services. So.
And Monica, I talked to Ty extensively about the exit fee and and I was impressed by his knowledge of that one subject. So I think you made the right choice.
Perfect.
Thank you. And the only other thing I want to mention is something that the Vice Chair Padilla mentioned at our last meeting, which is I think we also need to look and monitor the diversity that is within all of the firms that we hire through this board, and that's something that every board I sit on, everything that I do focus on, and that this is an exciting time. This is, for a lot of people, fairly new, and I think it's a great opportunity to get all types of people involved. I know these are specific to our legal issues, but we do have a diverse pool of legal folks in California, so I think that we should always be monitoring that and looking at that.
Right. So do we, well, we don't have many policies since we're brand new. So perhaps since we will have a flurry of hires in the near future, perhaps we can have a policy on our diversity, supplier diversity type policies come back, so that we can kind of engage in that and make sure that we're moving down the road in a way that we approve of.
Right.
So.
Agreed, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Any other discussion? And I don't see any cards for public to speak on item 8. Is anybody here that want to speak on number 8? So let's move to a vote. Please cast your vote.
Motion carries with all board members voting yes.
All right, so we are flying through this agenda. So item number 9, we now have the implementation plan, which we initially looked at our last meeting, and I think we're going to look at today and at the December meeting. So I see that one of our consultants is standing up. So do you want to cue this up, Cody, or do
Yep.
you want to just turn it over?
So this is the second of 3 times you will be hearing this item. This is discussion of our implementation plan, which again is due by the end of the year, and this is probably our most critical function for this year to get done. So Mark Fulmer with MRW and Associates is here. He's been working on this with Sean Marshall to put a draft together. So last meeting, if you recall, we presented essentially what the implementation plan is, what are the components, what it does, what it doesn't do, and took feedback from you all on areas where we had decision-making capacity. Mark and Sean have taken that and digested it and put it into a draft plan. There's still some pieces we need to complete, but we presented a draft to you at least today. So what we'd like to do is share that draft with you, go through some of the components that we included based on your feedback, and give you opportunity to take public comment on this item. So with that, Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Cody. Again, Mark Fulmer with MRW, and I'm sure that Sean will be popping up here to fill in the details. This is definitely a team effort between the two of us. So as a reminder, the implementation plan is a document that's required by the state. It gets submitted to the Utilities Commission for approval. Effectively, to get it approved, they have a checklist of items that it must contain, and of course, we're working off of that checklist. The second item that they're looking for, and this is based on some conversations I had with the CPUC staff, who are the ones that would be looking at the implementation plan and approving it, is effectively just demonstrating competency. That effectively you know what you're doing, you're bringing the right people on board, you know what type of consulting you need, you know what the basic steps are in order to have a successful launch. So as we prepared this, we had both of those items in mind, and I think the direction that Cody's been giving you all has been quite competent on that second particular topic. Effectively, it needs to be to the CPUC by the end of the year in order to have a launch in 2021, so that's the target that we're aiming for. Why don't we go ahead and have the next slide, please? So, as Cody noted, this is for discussion today and would be for voting next time. Effectively, we'll be reviewing what we've done and then answering your questions, letting you talk, and opening it up to the community. Next slide, please. Effectively, when we reviewed this, or Sean reviewed the implementation plan with you last time, we got 5 particular elements that you wanted to see specifically addressed in the implementation plan. First of all, the different product offerings, and per your direction, we've drafted it such that it would specify 2. One fully renewable, which would be the 100% renewable, and then one with some lesser amount in the 50 to 60% range. We're being squishy on that because we don't want to limit the procurement process. We want to have targets here that are attainable at a reasonable cost. So I think the intent would be to get it as high as we reasonably can, but not necessarily specify it and paint oneself into a corner in this document. Second was the customer phasing, how to bring the customers in. And we talked through a process for doing that effectively, initially with the municipal accounts. It's a relatively small number with a reasonably high volume, and that makes sure that the kinks can get worked out. Then bringing on the commercial class in the summer, where you could take advantage of the rate income that class would bring in. And then lastly, the residential customers, who would be by far the most numerous and the biggest challenge logistically for your eventual customer data provider as well as SDG need to do. The rate strategy was also discussed and questioned, and effectively we're aiming, or the document is aiming to offer a modest rate savings relative to the baseline of San Diego Gas and Electric. Effectively, any rate schedule that they would have, that you all would have customers in, would be mirrored, but would have rates set such that some modest savings could be achieved. On number 4, this is one of the elements that's in process, which is the organizational structure. That's effectively, we've been noting that what the key RFPs that are being issued are, and to the extent that we have vendors selected, those can be explicitly called out in the implementation plan. And that's part of the demonstration that you're going about this in a competent fashion. And then lastly, to note the financial information. Generally, a key piece is the estimated $40 million of startup costs, and that'll be addressed more at the final meeting or at the meeting next time when you're approving the banking and financing. And also, we'll be doing some updated tweaks to the financial data that's in the implementation plan. Note that none of these are necessarily set in stone. That is, the customer phasing, the rate savings, as well as the financials. The commission expects that to be your best estimate at the time. That's based on real data to the extent possible. But of course, they don't commit or lock you into any particular course of action. There's still other pieces to be done besides updating the financials. There's to be an organizational chart. That's an element that's required. And Cody and Sean will be working on that, so that can be included in the final draft of the implementation plan. So that is where we are. I would love to hear any thoughts or feedback.
All right.
Hopefully you'll have questions for Sean rather than me.
And not you. Well, I do think that it's important to note one of your slides that this is a compliance document and not a full business plan. So I think that's important to state from the beginning. So do we have any discussion on this item? Yes.
On page 33, you talk about targeting 2 to 4% in rates below SDG&E. When we were at the CCA conference, other folks used the term indexing, and I thought our friend from Solana Beach used indexing. Oh, do those mean the same thing, or is index a locked-in number and targeting as a discretionary goal?
They're expressing the same thing. When they say indexing, that means it'll be their host utilities rates.
They're setting it against.
Minus some decrement, so it's indexed to the host utilities rates. So we're saying the same thing in different words.
Okay, thank you.
And even though we say we're going to index it, set it based on the local IOU, 2 to 4%, in our documents it says actually 4%. Don't we put in a discount rate of 4% across the board?
That is, effectively, that is
Actually,
what I
5
used.
out to
Yeah,
2025.
that's what I used, and you're correct in saying that that's what I used in that particular pro forma, and that's what the assumptions allowed for. When you actually start getting the pricing in from your power providers, you'll then have a better idea of what discount you can actually offer. So I think I'm a bit conservative by nature, so I hope that the 4% can be achieved, but one can't really say until one's actually going out to the market and getting these pricing.
So again, it's a compliance document, not a business plan. Once we have that check-in with the market, we'll know more about where we're going to be, but we're definitely going to be between 2 and 4%.
That is true, and I like to point out, if we want to be an optimist and somehow the market moves well, there's no reason that it has to stay exactly within that range.
All right.
I do have just 2 questions. One is, just to clarify, we're talking about the power mix on page 5 and what's on the slide in front of me. I think within the plan, it says, plans to launch 2 power options, one that is a minimum 50 to 60% renewable content. Here it says 50 and up to 60%. I think that the one in the plan leaves us an option to go higher than the 60%. I feel like in the slide, it reads that we would have to be in between that range, so I just want to clarify.
Fair enough. I believe that the 50 to 60 reflects our, Sean and my professional judgment of what's really achievable. In the event that some bids come in and something above that is achievable at a reasonable price, then this document would not limit you to that content range.
All right.
If that happened, which it may not. Okay, yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify that. Let me see. I think my other question, which was having a carbon-free option, I think we discussed that last time. But we don't have to call that out in this. I think, so I was looking at some of the other CCAs, and there's, in East Bay, I believe, there's a 100% renewable option, and there's a completely carbon-free option. And so would we need to call that out if we had that? Would we need to call that out here, or is that?
There's a little history there.
Okay.
Always is with these things. So they launched with a 100% carbon-free option as opposed to the renewable option, because in that case, at the time when they went to market, they were able to get 100% portfolio at price parity with the incumbent utility. And so they launched with, I think it was 50% and then the 100% carbon-free. Then there was a public request for a third option that was 100% renewable as a voluntary opt-up at a slight price premium. So that came along later. Not necessarily that you would need to do both. You might be able to combine the two, but that's the background on that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
But our 100% RPS renewable qualified is a premium over.
Likely.
So again, if it's a compliance document, in the future, we can determine if we wanted to offer something less than 100% RPS qualified.
Absolutely, you'd have that flexibility.
All right. And so just procedurally, so this is a public hearing. So I guess I have to say this public hearing is open. And then I think we have one speaker, unless there's anybody else in the audience, and that one speaker is Matthew. Matthew, I know you, and I'm ashamed and embarrassed to say I can't pronounce your last name. So is it
Vasilakis, although I have
Vasilakis.
Yeah, you can just say Matthew.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. No, it's great, Chair. So hi, Matthew, Climate Action Campaign again. And I just had a clarifying question, and that is in the MRW lean report under the discussion analysis section on the first page, under the energy section, the energy supply products are described as renewable portfolio standard or RPS qualified renewable. However, in sections 2.4, renewable energy impacts, there is a call out for eligible renewables and carbon-free resources. And then similarly, both renewable and carbon-free resources are called out in 6.1. So I'm just kind of curious as to which is it. Is it RPS only, or is it renewable and carbon-free? So I guess that's just my own quick question. And that's important because all of our cities, we have climate action plans that explicitly call out the need for 100% renewable RPS energy by 2030 or 35. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we have our consultant try and answer that question?
Yes.
Thank you for pointing out that somewhat lapse in language. Effectively, the way I would frame it is that I'd recommend you be open to both options. I think having the renewable requirement be firm is a sound direction to go to. And as bids come in, if you can get a reasonable carbon-free power that isn't compliant with the renewable portfolio standards, large hydro specifically, then all the better. So I think, if nothing else, we'll be cleaning up the language in the implementation plan to reflect those options.
If I could add in a little bit there, so the two categories I'm hoping we're all clear on are RPS, or renewable versus greenhouse gas free. Again, this document is setting a baseline. I think the board may want to take further input from the public or do your own research on when we actually go to market, what do we want to look for? Are we okay with greenhouse gas free? Or do you want to be all renewable? And that we'll look at costs of those things for you and then give you some options to refine this decision further. But again, this is setting your baseline for just submitting compliance to the state.
However, we've set the baseline with that 100%. So in this document, I just want to be really clear. We are committing in this document that the voluntary product will be 100% RPS qualified renewable. Doesn't close the door on having a third or maximizing your GHG free power also within that. So I just want to make sure you guys are clear, and if we want to change that, we can. But in this document, we're committing to 100% option that's 100% RPS qualified.
So that would be the baseline, that would be the highest, and that's of the most premium. But you could, we could come back later on and say that we wanted to have, a 100% carbon-free option.
Sure, you could. And I think, and we'll talk to you about this and maybe strengthen language, the intention in writing this was to make sure that we also maximized carbon-free power as much as possible within both of those product offerings. But the metric that we're using is the RPS qualified power.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sean, I realize this is a compliance document. Somewhere down the line is the magic moment when we ask each city to determine for their customers what their, I forget what the term is, what their choice is.
What the default?
When does that process come? And are we limited to these two choices at that time, or could we have other choices at the magic default day?
Okay, great question, actually. So right now, the implementation plan is written such that all customers of the authority shall be enrolled in the default product, which right now we're defining as somewhere between 50 and 60%. We will maximize GHG within that as much as possible, given pricing and the things you'll look at. So the way this has worked in the past is that if there is a city that wants to enroll voluntarily at that 100%, the city itself, for its accounts, can pass a resolution to enroll its accounts only. Some have taken it a step further and passed a resolution to enroll the entire community in that higher product. So I would say that that's the exception rather than the rule. The way Clean Power Alliance did it is that they had 3 products, one that matched the utilities RPS content. I think it's at 36%.
36.
Yeah,
36, 50, and
and then there's a 50 and then 100. And they had a number of communities in their 33-member agency opt up voluntarily by resolution to those higher products. If any of your cities are interested in doing that, we should know that because that's also part of power planning, and that would be done through resolution later on.
So that's something we'll do. I'm just trying to project that out. A city could make that choice like the middle of 2020 or the end of 2020?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
Because we don't actually go out for power procurement and contracting until the fall.
Okay. And would we establish the different levels as Clean Power Alliance did, 36, 50, and 100? Or would we just say the 50 up to 60 and then the 100, and then if, a member said, I want it to be at 75?
So that gets confusing, right? Because the statute requires that all customers are given the option to have access to all products, regardless of whether one city opts in at a default product. So we need to be clear about the products that we're offering that are available to all customers. So unfortunately, I don't personally recommend that you would further carve it out for your own city. That has to be a JPA-wide decision that you make because all customers have access to everything.
All right. So it gets back to that question that we had at our first meeting. How many offerings are we going to have?
Right now, we're looking at 2.
2.
You can always expand it, but the floor right now is 2 in this document.
And that was it for public comment. Any other? So we have one more person whenever you get a chance, if you want to just fill out a card and give it to, actually, it's just a, yeah, you would want the card so that you can record the name, right? So whenever you get a chance.
Sure.
Perfect.
Hi, good afternoon. Micah Matrosky, environmental organizer with IBEW Local 569, expressing a couple of points from a letter that we sent with our allies at the Sierra Club last week, speaking to this topic of renewables versus carbon-free versus some of the product offerings. We support staff and the board in moving forward with 2 product offerings, one that is minimum 50% renewable, and the second one being a 100% renewable opt-up product with a small premium, the latter of which will provide customers with a voluntary choice to go above and beyond what is offered at a small price. We're concerned over offering a product that is 100% carbon-free rather than 100% renewable. A transition to a 100% clean energy economy needs to focus on investing in new renewable and carbon-free projects such as solar, wind, geothermal, and not just whether the energy is carbon-free. Carbon-free resources that are not renewable are nuclear and large hydroelectric facilities, and we object to the CEC procuring nuclear, as we've discussed in public comment, and we're concerned about procurement from large hydro because one reason is this could displace local renewable energy procurement and local job creation from the local renewable resources here in our region, like solar, wind, and geothermal. We have some additional points that we've spoken to, and I'll just pass on a copy of the letter to the clerk. Thanks.
Thank you. All right,
That's a good
so I
question
guess
on
we'll, go ahead.
For our consultants, Micah said there was 100% plus a little bump up you can buy. Is that a considered a third option, or is that just a second option with a bump up? I wasn't sure, Micah, if I quite grasped that. Can you clarify that for us?
I think what was intended was for the 100% renewable product, there would be a small price bump up. So a price premium, often of some amount depending on what can be borne. So I think that's what she intended, and I'll let her speak for herself if I'm getting that wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is consistent with your plan, what she's
Yes, it
asking
is.
for. Okay, thank you.
And the 50% would be the default, and then if somebody wanted to opt up to the 100%, that would be the highest and the premium, and so that would be exceeding the 2 to 4% discount from the local IOU. Yeah. So let's close the public hearing, and then bring it back to us. Any further questions on this item? All right, so then I will entertain a motion. Yeah, we do. Do we need a motion to move this? On first hearing or first reading or
Yeah, no, just review and discussion.
just receive and file? All right, I was trying to make it more formal than it really is.
Chair, I think it was an informational only item.
All right,
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's move to the next item, which is going to be the very engaging and fun discussion of our name. And I say that because like every time I go to a different meeting, I have to say San Diego Regional Community Choice Energy Joint Powers Authority, and they're like, what? So it's gonna be nice to kind of abbreviate it. So let's just kind of open it. Cody, did you want to say anything? Just cue it up, or do we just want to open it up for discussion?
I don't know that there's much to intro on this, except
All
that
right.
I've heard from across the board, literally, that we need a new name. There's some points to consider, including simplicity and brand. Does it have a nice acronym? Is it easy to say? Is it unique? Purpose and clarity, we don't have a lot of those policies in place about mission and vision, but we do know that we were founded with the principles of choice, community, and providing clean and renewable energy. Is the name clear and functionally descriptive in that sense? In geography, I've heard both sides of the issue. Do we want to keep a geographic moniker in our name? Do we want to leave that open in case we expand in the future? All just things for you to consider. I have a short list that I presented to you, although you are more than welcome to come up with new ideas. These were run through 3 different marketing communications professionals just to get a professional expertise opinion on these. And they looked, I could tell you, looked directly at acronyms and simplicity, and is there something you could say that's kind of a tagline that goes with it? I didn't pay anybody to do that, so this is the extent that we got. I have heard another recommendation from an alternate about San Diego Community Power. That's another option to throw out to you, but we'd like to have this name adopted so that we can make the amendment and put it on all of our filing documents. So hopefully we can come to a resolution today, and if not, we could bring it back next month.
All right.
I
so
will leave you there.
if it's okay with the board, we have two members of the public that want to speak to this matter. If it's okay, we'll just go to the public first for their comments, and then we can take it back to us. Matthew, you're up first.
You're gonna see so much of me the next year. Again, Matthew, Climate Action Campaign. We just wanted to comment that since this is a public, community-driven, and owned nonprofit, that the word community be incorporated into the final name. We also believe that a geographic marker is key. We're just concerned that if the word community is omitted, people may have a hard time distinguishing the CCE program from a for-profit private business. And then we also believe a geographic description is important for the name, and since we are in the San Diego region, San Diego or San Diego Metro is the best indicator for that. So San Diego Community Power, San Diego Community Energy, Community Power San Diego, some kind of alphabet soup of that, are some of the ideas that we think best reflect what the CCE is and the relationship with the greater community. So thank you.
What do you think about the item number 5, or the option 5, Southern California Community Power?
I mean, that's fine, although I will say, I mean, if the idea is that if this more general Southern California term is meant to be an expansion opportunity into other regions, realistically, looking at where we are, there's a municipality to our east, to the north of us, we've got SoCal Edison, which we're not likely to cross-intersect with, and then for the cities that are in SDG&E territory in Orange County, they already have SDG&E as a name, so I don't think they'd be peeved if it was San Diego, so that's just my insight.
Good insight. All right, next in the queue is Jay Powell.
Dr. Jen wants to speak to him.
All right, perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jay Powell, I'm a resident of City of San Diego, and I've submitted a letter to our representative and alternate advocating for very similar to what Matthew's talking about, that the name San Diego Community Power. And I suggest it really to emphasize the authority's commitment to the generation of renewable energy locally to benefit all the constituent communities, ensure that the residents and businesses that are located in the communities are engaged to participate in the setting of policies and programs for the authority. As the authority's November 16 workshop, I presented the recommendation of the city's Sustainable Energy Advisory Board, on which I serve as a member, regarding the evaluation and implementation of the CCAs, and I've again distributed that. I think most of you saw that at the workshop on Saturday. The areas highlight and emphasize again the need to ensure that all affected communities are engaged and encouraged to participate and benefit from the programs and the projects employed by the authority. I think I had the honor of serving for 20 years with a community-based development organization. Mr. Baber actually served on the board of that when I first started. And I think it is critically important, as it's been some of the examples there and what Matthew mentioned in the CAC, that community be in the name. This is the San Diego region, and I think what we want to do is power is with the people. It's an old expression, but it really has meaning in terms of what's the heart and soul of how this organization is going to operate and how is it going to be responsive and accountable to the constituent communities, and that means all of them. The whole issue of equity and social and economic equity has to be represented there too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Dr. Jen Campbell.
Hi, I'm the one who, the alternate who suggested SD Community Power, but we could spell it out and say San Diego Community Power, but then it would be SDCP, which I think is pretty easy. And it's interesting, Matthew and I came up with the same thing and hadn't even discussed it. And I agree with Mr. Powell as well. So we're unified down here. So I hope that you'll consider what we did, even though we didn't caucus. And then I just wanted to add one thing that I learned at the workshop a couple weeks ago, and that was, I believe it was Solana Beach that said they tried to get 3% below SDG&E rates, and they had to go back and change it down to 2%. So I think we have to be extremely cautious of what we promise in terms of the rates. I think it's going to take us a few years to build up our portfolio, our staff, our budget, et cetera. And so I think we have to be really careful about our rates at the beginning. Thanks.
Point well taken. Thank you. All right, let's bring it back to board discussion. What do you guys think? So it sounds like the audience is saying San Diego Community Power. What do we think?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is for either Matt, Dr. Jen, or Jay. For either Jay, Matt, or Dr. Jen, did you Google SDCP? Is there any other organization that uses that acronym?
Let's do it right now.
Yes. Please do. I can't. Please do. I can't Google from the stage here, but if you can find that out to make sure, I'm just curious if anyone else has that or,
San Dimas Connection Project.
it's the IP lawyer in me that was always thinking this.
San Dimas High School.
Wait, we didn't have to stop the entire meeting for Googling. Anyway, that sounds like a good name. I just wanted to see who else may have that acronym, and does it create any challenges?
I like the SD Power as well. That's I think that's easy and probably lends itself to really good marketing. The Southern, I like the Southern California Community Power, though I think that when I think of Southern California, I think of Southern California Gas Company, Southern California Edison, and so I think of utility and I think of Los Angeles. So I'm not sure how other people feel about that, though we are Southern California, and nobody is called Southern California in terms of the CCE world.
I think we'd want to, as one of the speakers said, we want to focus on our geographic area, and I really like SD Power. I also like San Diego Community Power. I think those are two superior options.
All right.
Yeah, I don't like things with Southern California in it just because when I worked at the ACLU, we were always overshadowed by LA, and theirs was Southern California ACLU or something like that. And in the beginning, we were merged and then we split apart. So I have this thing about San Diego having our own identity. But understanding that using that name we could lend ourselves to, expansion. I like SD Power too. Actually like Empower SD because I like the word empower. But I think I agree with the community that community should be placed in the title. I think it gives us a directive as a board to always have the community in mind when we're doing these things and making these very hard decisions that we have to make. So there's my feedback.
All right, Bill, I think we are moving toward consensus on SD Power or San Diego Community Power.
Can I ask Cody, since you'll have to say this a million times, do you have a personal opinion on this?
I do like the word community as well. I started with that as well when I started brainstorming because I think it's really important and it's what we're all trying to do and who to serve. I also like things that roll off the tongue and I don't stumble over and have a long government-y name. So I like SD Power for that reason. It's your SD Power. It's really simple. It's an empowering word. But San Diego Community Power, SD Community Power, or Community Power SD, I like that as well. So I will be happy with any of those options, and I appreciate you letting me weigh in.
I like San Diego Community Power.
All right, we can do that. We could always say SD Community Power. That's a bit simpler. Sean, did you have a comment?
The only thing to think about as you guys are owning your geography, awesome, is that when we revise the JPA agreement as a legal document and the implementation plan as a legal document, I'm a tiny bit worried about having your formal name be SD as opposed to spelling it out.
All right.
So you could always brand using some shortened version of it. I'm just thinking for legal purposes, you might want to spell it out.
Right, and I
Just
think
another
we're
concern.
leaning towards San Diego Community Power, and I just kind of, from a branding perspective, I just said SD Community Power.
I'm just
So-
asking for the formal name.
All right, perfect. But there was a gentleman back there with his hand up. Did you still have a comment? Did you want to come up to the mic so we can record and amplify your voice?
So that we're not just referring to the city of San Diego, why couldn't we add the word county? San Diego County Community Power.
All right. Did you want to, could you do me a favor, sir, when you get a chance, if you could record your name with the clerk, just so we know who spoke? Good, fair comment. What do people think?
I'm sorry, I did think about regional impact, but I think it's too long. And we're trying to get ourselves to a point where we can say this. And we kind of have this long name now that has regional in it. And I do get the point, but I would stick with San Diego Community Power, SD Community Power.
Bill?
Chair, well, go ahead, Bill, if you have something.
Go ahead.
I would just say, again, I know how things are. When I used to go to get something at the fast food, it was Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, they're still Kentucky Fried Chicken, but we go to KFC now. So we are at some point in time going to probably be SDP or SDCP. But I would go ahead, and I think we have consensus here, but I will make the motion to name our organization San Diego Community Power. So moved.
I'll second that.
I was just going to give our Googlers a chance to report in. Did anyone find an SDCP who went to the computer?
What did you find?
If I would just say, Chair, ultimately, if we can have the abbreviated name, I think that would be good on a website, but we would still probably want to spell out the entire domain name for the website.
Right, I agree. What did you find?
As you can guess, my name is Larry Emerson. I live in National City, and there's many definitions. Sonora Desert Conservation Plan, Smallholder Dairy Commercialized Program, San Diego Church Planting, San Diego Cooperative Preschool, San Dimas Connection Project, and it goes on and on.
But it's all good.
But nothing
Specialized
power,
dementia
power,
care
power.
program.
Yeah, none of those in branding or trademark are close enough in kind. There's no energy power.
Right.
I was thinking more energy related.
Right.
So I'm okay with that.
All right, so we
That's
have-
Matt, did you find anything?
Well, it was his suggestion, so. He didn't steer us wrong. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Please cast your vote.
Motion carries with all council,
Yay,
with all
we have a new
board members
name.
voting yes.
We have a new name.
Yeah. The baby was 3 months old before we picked a name.
All right, and then I guess we'll have all the appropriate documents coming forth at some point, the JPA agreement stuff. All right, so let's move on to item number 11, board member and staff announcements. Do any of my fellow board members have anything to say? Yes?
My only announcement is I'm not going to be able to attend our next meeting on December 9th in beautiful Encinitas. I have my
Beautiful
League of
Encinitas.
Cities duty, but our La Mesa alternate, Greg Moore, will be representing the city of La Mesa.
All right, any other announcements? Our next meeting is December 9th, and everybody is invited to, as Bill says, the beautiful city of Encinitas. We're gonna overlook the Pacific Ocean there. It's really nice. The chambers are not as nice as this chambers, but it is very intimate and comfy. Do we have any other board
Yeah,
announcements?
I just wanted to say, welcome to Chula Vista. This is a great city. I grew up here when it was about 70,000 people. Now we're over 300,000 people. And we are looking to probably become 350 to 400,000 over the next 20 years or so. So we're trying to make sure that we plan appropriately and work appropriately. I wanted to thank Cody and everybody and congratulate the new clerk. But this is a startup, so it's very, very exciting. I'm a recovering banker, and I got picked up from being a banker and moved into the high-tech industry. And I still remember going in a suit and interviewing and looking around, seeing all these people in T-shirts and jeans. And I still remember thinking, okay, I'm going to interview on Fridays. But then what happens is I finally got my final interview with the president and CEO, and he was in shorts and Birkenstocks. And he said that he wanted to hire me, and it was a great opportunity. So there are going to be many exciting opportunities. We're going to hopefully be able to move fast and work fast, but we also have to make sure that we continue to look at the market as a whole, continue to do some of the basic financial issues. This is an exciting time, but we still need to make sure that we view the reality of what we are doing, because this is very, very significant. We want to make sure that we keep the lights on at a reasonable amount. And so again, I'm really happy to be the alternate, and thank you for letting me sit in today.
Thank you for joining us. All right, if there are no more announcements, I'm going to adjourn us and say happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a healthy and safe Thanksgiving. Thank you.